Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a highly esoteric, honestly incredibly fascinating text that maps out one author's deeply personal and complex worldview. We are talking about a wild journey into criminal psychology, cosmic surveillance, and ultimate spiritual rebellion. If you've ever wondered just how far the human mind can go to build a framework around the feeling of being constantly watched and judged, you are definitely in for a ride.
To make sense of this dense and rambling manifesto, we're going to break it down into 5 distinct chapters. 1. The game of criminal minds. 2. The observation conspiracy. 3. The mechanics of manipulation. 4. Trapped in predestination. And 5. The path to salvation.
So, let's jump right into Chapter 1, The Game of Criminal Minds. The author kicks things off with a pretty bold claim. They assert that criminality, and really human behavior as a whole, is strictly shaped by cultural rules. In this framework, the minds of criminals are basically designed by God to play a unique game that depends entirely on the culture they happen to belong to. It's all about past learnings and localized strategies for dealing with enemies. According to the text, human beings inherently avoid fair trials. That's just the baseline. Instead, people opt to manipulate situations and actively block others to increase their own chances of winning. It's a cynical, zero-sum game, right? The author views society as an open competition driven by massive monetary rewards, where people will literally go as far as utilizing fake legal cases just to exploit the system for compensation.
But here is where the framework really expands. What happens when this everyday cultural game of survival isn't just playing out naturally, but is actually being monitored by a higher, hidden authority? This question brings us to a crucial turning point in the author's philosophy, shifting our focus from everyday human nature to grand, systemic surveillance.
And that brings us to Chapter 2, The Observation Conspiracy. The author posits a chilling, 3-step process of continuous persecution. Step 1. Authorities use hypnotic gadgets to actually sense and measure the human brain. Step 2. These hidden observers don't just watch, they edit signals. They actively generate specific emotions in the victim, things like sudden happiness, excitement, or even sexual attraction. And Step 3. Based on those forced reactions, the authorities administer invisible punishments.
Now, what's really interesting here is how the author defines these punishments. We aren't talking about physical jail time. Invisible punishments are covert penalties, manifesting as a literal loss of lifespan, or as strictly controlled blocked life events. It's a systemic limitation administered by what the author calls Western kings or state authorities, designed to keep the individual exactly where they want them.
Which begs a terrifying question. If our emotions and our life events are being secretly edited by these gadgets, who is actually in control of our destiny? This profound existential dread leads us directly into the author's deeply personal theory on the spiritual mechanics of this cosmic manipulation.
Let's explore that in Chapter 3, The Mechanics of Manipulation.
The text makes a massive philosophical leap here. It suggests that the drive to manipulate isn't just a learned behavioral quirk. It is a spiritual absolute. It is the inherent tendency of the soul itself.
Think about their unique definition for a second. Manipulation is framed as an act of spiritual dominance. The soul wants to prove itself, and it does so by forcing someone else's destiny into a non-rewarding state. The ultimate goal? To hoard all the rewards for oneself and to project one's own judgments, one's own reality, onto someone else's brain.
The text goes on to map out a literal cosmic battle. On one side, you have the conspiring, satanic authorities. These are the ones who observe, program beliefs, use gadgets, and force destiny. On the flip side, you have angel beings. These are rare entities who occasionally slip through the surveillance net to transfer positive energy, power, and provide the author with a clear understanding of what's really going on.
But all of this creates a massive paradox. The author wrestles with this wild idea. If you destroy all the recorded data of a person, the tapes, the measurements, the observations, does that person truly exist in this world anymore? It echoes our own modern anxieties about data tracking, right? Like, if we aren't recorded online, do we even exist? For the author, being recorded by these gadgets actually validates their existence, yet it's simultaneously the exact tool of their eternal imprisonment.
Which brings us to Chapter 4, Trapped in Predestination.
The text reveals a deep, consuming anxiety here.
The ultimate threat isn't just dying. It's what the author calls a Peter Stein set of affairs. The fear is that the conspiracy's ultimate goal is to force the author, upon death, to be predestined to take birth to the exact same mother, the exact same father, and the same brothers. It is a literal closed loop of suffering that completely prevents any forward spiritual progress.
And to enforce this horrifying loop, the satanic forces allegedly use highly specific, continuous psychological programming. We're talking about hypnotic gadgets deployed in the night, laser shots, pictures forced into the eyes, and the playing of specific tunes, vibrations, and audio tapes of the author's own past voices.
This is where the trap truly snaps shut. The author believes that all this recorded data creates a magnetic attraction. By constantly replaying the past, the authorities create an attachment that literally pulls the soul back into the exact same life cycle. The surveillance data acts as the gravity that causes the forced rebirth.
So, how do you escape? That's Chapter 5, The Path to Salvation.
The proposed solution is totally absolute. True salvation requires the complete destruction of the surveillance mechanisms, the recording gadgets, and the nullification of those satanic attractions. The entities behind the surveillance basically must be destroyed or cursed so the soul is simply no longer tracked.
The author outlines a three-step path to achieve this. Step 1 involves calling a prayer for the physical and spiritual destruction of the satanic gadgets. Step 2 requires the author to nullify those worldly attractions by utterly refusing to play the cultural games of manipulation and risk-taking. And Step 3 is to counter the hypnotic programming by programming oneself purely with the Word of God, targeting the road to heavens rather than earthly repetition.
Ultimately, the author views themselves as a prisoner who is constantly on trial. The observers try to elicit behavioral responses to prove the author is a criminal. The only true escape, the only way to actually win, is a total rejection of the forces trying to provoke a reaction. You win the game by absolutely refusing to play it.
But amidst all this heavy talk of cosmic battles, satanic gadgets, and soul manipulation, we get a surprisingly grounded, deeply human tragedy. Concluding what they called their 1749 speech, the author laments that they are a locked artist. Because all of this massive surveillance had a very specific earthly impact. Their dreams of participating and interacting in the Bollywood industry were intentionally blocked. Because of these hidden observers, their art is locked in space and time, completely vanishing without ever reaching a wider audience.
Which leaves us with a truly fascinating, provocative question to end on today. When a person's entire reality feels like a rigged game of endless surveillance, where even their dreams of Bollywood are thwarted by cosmic forces, is complete spiritual withdrawal the only true act of rebellion left? It's an incredible testament to the lengths the human mind will go to map out, explain, and ultimately try to escape a feeling of profound systemic isolation. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the games being played around you.